The council chamber of the alien flagship was filled with sharp voices, glowing screens, and the smell of victory before the battle even began. Around the round table sat admirals, generals, and warlords from across the empire. They had spent years hunting humans from one corner of the galaxy to another, and now they were certain the final human fleet was trapped. Maps hovered in the air, glowing in red and blue. Red showed the alien ships, thousands strong, surrounding the small cluster of human vessels. Blue showed the humans, few in number, backed into a dead system, nowhere to run. To the aliens, it looked like a simple hunt. By the next cycle, one admiral said proudly, the humans will be nothing but history. Every alien at the table agreed. Their species had conquered empires, swallowed planets, crushed rebellions. Humans were only one more name to erase. The High Commander leaned back in his chair, claws drumming on the steel surface. His fangs showed in a cruel grin. Bring their leader on screen, he ordered. A moment later, the air shimmered, and the hologram of a man appeared. He wore no golden armor, no crown, no sign of pride. Just a plain officer's uniform. He looked younger than they expected, his face scarred but calm. The room went still. For a breathless second, it was predator meeting prey. Then, the human captain did something no one expected. He smiled. It was not a nervous smile, not the grin of a man facing defeat. It was slow, quiet, and confident, as if he had already seen the end of the battle. His eyes carried a weight that unsettled the entire chamber. The warlords looked at each other, confused. One of them let out a hiss. What is this? Another spat. Mockery. He knows he is about to die, so he pretends to be brave. But deep inside, none of them believed it. That smile was not weakness. It was something else. Something they could not understand. The High Commander slammed his hand on the table. Foolish human. Do you think your tricks will save you? You are surrounded. Your ships are outnumbered 10-1. You will burn before the next dawn. The captain didn't answer. He only smiled again, then tilted his head slightly, as if he was waiting for the aliens to make the first mistake. The silence stretched until it became unbearable. The hologram blinked away, but the feeling remained in the chamber. That smile haunted them like a shadow. On the bridge of his flagship, the human captain stood at the front window. Outside, stars glittered cold and distant. His fleet floated silently behind him, small, fragile, compared to the storm gathering on the other side. Yet his crew looked at him with trust, not fear. They had seen that smile before, and every time it had meant one thing. The enemy was already walking into his hands. Sir, one officer said carefully, they are preparing to fire. Orders. The captain's lips curled again, just faintly. Not yet, he said. Let them believe we are helpless. The officer hesitated, then nodded. Around the bridge, men and women straightened in their chairs. They would not question him. Not when he wore that smile. Back in the alien chamber, unease spread. Young officers whispered nervously. Why did he smile? One asked. Because he is insane. Another answered quickly, though his own voice shook. No, said a third. Because he knows something we don't. The High Commander roared to silence them. Enough. Begin the assault. End this charade. And so the engines of thousands of alien ships lit up, blazing across the dark. Cannons charged. Plasma fire filled the void. A wave of destruction surged toward the human fleet like a flood meant to drown a tiny island. Alien commanders leaned forward, eager to see the humans break, to watch their ships shatter. But the humans did not move. The fleet stayed perfectly still, like statues in the dark. Not a single cannon fired, not a single engine flared. They only waited. What are they doing? An alien officer demanded. Why don't they fight back? No one had an answer. The attack storm raged, but still the humans remained silent. And in every alien mind, the memory of that smile grew sharper, colder. What if it was not madness? What if it was a warning? The High Commander growled, but his claws tapped the table faster than before. For the first time, he wondered if he had miscalculated. On his bridge, the captain's eyes never left the enemy fleet. His crew leaned closer, breath caught, waiting for his signal. Finally, he raised his hand. "Steady," he whispered. "Wait for it." And with that, the storm truly began. The first wave of alien fire crossed the emptiness of space like falling suns. Explosions lit up the black void as plasma bolts and missiles tore through the silence. To the aliens, it looked unstoppable. No fleet could survive this kind of firepower. On the alien flagship, the High Commander leaned forward, lips curled in victory. "Watch them burn," he hissed. Around him, the other warlords nodded, certain that within seconds the humans would break into ashes. But the human fleet remained still. Not a single ship turned to run. Not a single cannon fired back. They simply floated, silent and waiting, as if the storm of light did not concern them. Confusion began to spread in the alien chamber. "Why are they not moving?" one officer demanded. Another slammed his claw against the table. "They cannot defend themselves. They are frozen." Yet as the storm of fire reached the human ships, something strange happened. The bolts of plasma did not strike. The missiles did not explode. They vanished, swallowed into nothingness, as if the space around the humans had shifted. The alien screens blinked with error symbols. Weapons had hit, but there was no damage. Gasps filled the chamber. "Impossible!" one admiral shouted. "Our scanners show impact." But on the human flagship, the truth was clear. Hidden fields shimmered faintly around the fleet, invisible to the naked eye. It was a trap, a shield net prepared long before the battle. The captain stood calm at the center of the bridge, his face lit by the soft glow of enemy fire dissolving harmlessly. "Now they know," he said softly. His officers looked at each other with wide eyes. They had trusted him, but still, the brilliance of his plan stunned them. He had drawn the aliens into a false sense of power, letting them believe humans were defenseless. And now, the first move belonged not to the Empire but to him. Back in the alien war room, panic whispered through the ranks. They nullified our weapons? No. No fleet has this technology. It must be some trick. The High Commander snarled, though sweat glistened across his scaled brow. No shield can last against our full fire. Increase the barrage. Double the power. At his command, the storm grew fiercer. Waves of plasma filled the battlefield. Entire sectors of space glowed like suns colliding. But still, the human ships endured. The alien attack dissolved again and again, feeding the shield net that drank the energy like water. It was then the youngest officer, voice trembling, spoke aloud what many feared. "High Commander," the smile. He knew this would happen. The chamber went silent. No one wanted to admit it, but all of them thought of the same thing. That quiet, unshaken smile of the human captain. It had not been madness. It had been certainty. On the bridge of his flagship, the human captain finally lowered his hand. His voice was steady, but carried through the room like thunder. "Begin the maneuver." Engines flared. For the first time, the human fleet moved. Not in chaos, not in fear, but in perfect formation. Ships glided forward as if pulled by a single string. Their movements were sharp, disciplined, almost unnatural. The alien generals stared at their screens in disbelief. How can such a small fleet move like that? No hesitation, no confusion. "They move as one mind," whispered another. Then the humans struck back. From the heart of their fleet, hidden bays opened, and swarms of drones shot outward like sparks from a fire. They were small, nearly invisible, too fast for alien scanners to track. They slipped between the great warships, weaving through defenses with impossible precision. And then explosions. Alien destroyers, once proud and towering, erupted in bursts of fire. One after another, ships collapsed, torn apart from inside. The drones were not weapons of raw power, but of surgical strikes. They cut engines, pierced reactors, silenced communications. Within minutes, dozens of alien ships were crippled, left floating powerless. The alien war room erupted into chaos. Commanders shouted orders, slamming claws against consoles, demanding explanations. But their words clashed like thunder, no clear command reaching the battlefield. The High Commander rose to his feet, eyes blazing. Regroup the fleet. Crush their flagship before it's too late. But even he felt the cold grip of doubt. The humans had not just survived, they had predicted everything. Every alien attack seemed already known, every move countered. And in the middle of it all, that human captain still smiled. The battlefield that should have been the Empire's triumph had turned into something else. Fear spread through the alien ranks. Soldiers whispered, voices breaking. We were supposed to win in minutes. So why do I feel like we are the ones being hunted? The truth was sinking in. The first move was not theirs. The humans had let them strike, had let them waste their strength. And now, piece by piece, the trap was closing. On the flagship bridge, the human captain's voice rang out again, calm as ever. This is only the beginning. His crew watched him with awe. Outside the windows, alien ships burned like falling stars, and the storm of the enemy's power was turning back upon them. The first move had been made, and it did not belong to the Empire, it belonged to humanity. The battlefield burned with shattered metal and drifting wreckage. Alien ships, once proud, floated powerless in the darkness, their engines dead, their weapons silenced. The first human counterstrike had stunned the galaxy's most feared empire. But the true horror was still hidden. On the alien flagship, the High Commander slammed his claw against the table, his fangs flashing with rage. Do not lose control. It is only drones. Destroy them. Regroup the fleet. Screens flickered as officers scrambled to obey. Yet every command was met with static, every order delayed. Confusion spread like fire in dry grass. One of the younger officers looked up from his console, his scales pale. High Commander, something is wrong with our network. It is as if. He stopped, afraid to finish the thought. The High Commander roared, Speak! The officer swallowed hard. It is as if they knew our codes. Our systems are jammed from the inside. The chamber froze. For an empire that ruled hundreds of worlds, their codes were sacred, unbreakable. Yet somehow the humans had broken in. On the human flagship, the captain stood in the dim glow of his bridge, eyes sharp as steel. Phase 2, he said calmly. His crew worked like clockwork. Fingers moved over consoles, voices steady, no hesitation. Dozens of silent signals rippled across the fleet. In the dark, hidden satellites came alive, devices buried in the star system long before today's battle. They flickered awake like predators rising from sleep. Invisible waves spread out, wrapping around the alien fleet. Every alien scanner, every comm channel, every targeting system twisted. The Empire's great fleet was now blind. Lock them down, the captain ordered. And it was done. In the alien war room, chaos exploded. My weapons are offline. Our targeting is broken. We cannot lock the humans. Communications. I can't reach the second fleet. The High Commander's claws scraped deep into the table. His voice shook with fury and fear. Impossible. How could humans know this system? How could they hide these machines from us? An older admiral whispered the thought no one wanted to hear. They planned this from the beginning. The memory of that smile returned, cold and sharp. Out on the battlefield, the trap tightened. Human ships spread apart, weaving through the Empire's massive formation with impossible precision. Alien vessels tried to respond, but every time they turned, their own systems betrayed them. Weapons fired at wrong targets, coordinates scrambled, engines stalled. Then came the mines. From the black emptiness of space, tiny charges ignited. Mines hidden in the dust of the system, invisible until now, flared awake. Alien cruisers struck them and erupted into fire. Flagships shuddered as explosions tore through their hulls. The alien fleet was not only surrounded, it was inside a cage. On the human bridge, one officer whispered in awe. They walked straight into it. The captain nodded once. And now they cannot walk out. Back on the alien flagship, panic filled the chamber. Officers shouted, voices clashing like thunder. Some demanded retreat, others screamed for all-out assault. The High Commander tried to roar them into silence, but even he felt the grip of dread. The younger officer who had spoken before now whispered, almost to himself, "We never trapped them. They trapped us." The words cut deeper than any weapon. Across the battlefield, alien soldiers realized the truth too late. They had believed themselves hunters cornering weak prey. But the humans had lured them here, step by step, into a system prepared like a snare. Every asteroid hit a mine. Every comm channel hit a trick. Every move had been predicted. And at the center of it all was that one man, the human captain, who smiled as if he had written this moment long ago. "Commander," one alien officer begged, "we must retreat before we lose everything." But the High Commander's face was twisted with rage. "Retreat?" he spat. "From humans? Never." He slammed his fist down. "All ships, charge forward. Break their flagship, no matter the cost." The order echoed through the broken fleet, but ships did not move as one. Many were crippled, others too afraid. Some captains disobeyed, turning their vessels away from the slaughter. Discipline shattered. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's army was not united. It was crumbling. On the human flagship, the captain watched the chaos with cold eyes. His crew looked to him, waiting for the next step. He spoke quietly, almost like a whisper, but his voice carried weight like iron. "Now they see. Their empire is not invincible. Their fear will do the rest." His officers exchanged glances. They could feel it too. The trap had not just broken the alien fleet, it had broken their spirit. And still, the captain's smile remained, carved into the hearts of friend and enemy alike. In the war room, silence began to spread. For the first time, no one shouted. The admirals stared at the glowing screens, watching their mighty fleet fall apart. Not because of raw strength, but because one human had led them by the hand into their own grave. The youngest officer whispered again, voice trembling. That smile, it was never for arrogance. It was the smile of a man who already won. The High Commander could not answer. His claws shook, his voice caught in his throat. The trap had been revealed, and it was already too late. The great alien fleet was supposed to be unbreakable. Thousands of warships had gathered, proud banners of the Empire shining across the stars. They had believed victory was certain. Yet now, the battlefield was full of broken signals, drifting wreckage, and burning hulks of their once mighty vessels. In every corner of the armada, whispers began to rise. Soldiers who once spoke of glory now spoke of doom. Pilots who had sworn to crush humanity now felt their claws tremble over their controls. And in every mind, one image returned again and again, the smile of the human captain. On a mid-level cruiser, a young alien soldier clutched the rail of his station, his scales slick with sweat. He turned to his superior with wide, frightened eyes. "Sir, how did they know? Every move, every order, they answered before we even acted. It's as if..." He hesitated. "As if what?" the officer growled. "As if they can see inside our heads." The words spread like poison. Soon others repeated it. "Humans can read our minds. Humans can see the future." None of it was true, but fear does not care about truth. On another ship, discipline cracked. The captain of a destroyer shouted orders, but his crew ignored him. Some whispered about desertion, others about surrender. One officer openly rebelled, throwing his headset to the ground. "Why fight?" he cried. "The humans are not fighting us. They are hunting us." Arguments broke into violence. Blades were drawn inside the very ships that were meant to be united. The Empire's strength, its order, its obedience was starting to collapse. Back in the alien war chamber, the High Commander's fury shook the walls. He roared, his voice cutting through the panic. "Silence your fears. Humans are weak. They have no powers, no magic. They only delay the inevitable. Fight!" But his words fell heavy and empty. Even as he spoke, another report came in. 2 more flagships destroyed, 5 cruisers disabled, 6 captains refusing to engage. The admirals looked at him, their faces pale. No one dared say it aloud, but they were all thinking the same. The Empire had never lost like this before. And it was not because of human strength. It was because of fear. On the human flagship, the captain stood at the front window watching the enemy crumble. His crew worked in silence, efficient and calm, while across the void their enemies fell into chaos. "Sir," one officer reported, "alien communications are in disarray. Many captains are refusing central orders." The captain nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the distant flashes of fire. "Fear spreads faster than fire. We only needed to give it a spark." His smile returned, faint but steady, and his crew felt a shiver. Not of fear, but of awe. They were watching not just a battle, but the breaking of an empire. On alien ships far from the front lines, younger soldiers whispered to each other. Why did he smile? Why, when he was surrounded, did he look as if we were the ones doomed? One veteran spat, voice shaking. Because he knew. He knew from the beginning. The whispers grew into something larger. Some called the captain a demon. Others called him a prophet. A few, desperate and trembling, called him death itself. By the time the rumors spread through the fleet, the humans no longer needed to fire every weapon. Fear was doing their work for them. Inside the war chamber, the High Commander slammed his fist down again, shattering the edge of the table. His voice cracked with both rage and something darker, doubt. Do not believe their lies. Humans are nothing. But even his generals did not look convinced anymore. One of them finally spoke, his voice low but firm. High Commander, perhaps we should retreat. The word fell into the silence like a curse. Retreat. The Empire had not retreated in centuries. To speak of it was shameful. Yet in that moment, many eyes turned toward the door, thinking the same thought. The High Commander's claws shook as he bared his fangs. Retreat? From them? Never. But his roar could not drown the sound of fear. On the human flagship, the captain gave another quiet order. His ships moved again, striking not at the strongest vessels, but the weakest. He did not need to kill them all. He only needed to show the cracks. Every time another alien ship burned, more soldiers lost faith. Every time human drones slipped past defenses, more captains doubted their orders. One by one, ships began to drift back, engines turning away from the fight. Some fled into hyperspace without permission. Others powered down, refusing to fight at all. The Empire's fleet, once a wall of firepower, was turning into a broken chain. And through it all, the legend of the smile grew. Some swore the captain's face appeared on their screens even when no transmission was sent. Others swore they felt his eyes watching them through the stars. Every rumor, every fear, spread faster than the truth. By the time the battle reached its middle, many alien soldiers no longer asked if they would lose. They only asked when. The fear was complete. The ranks were crumbling. And still, somewhere in the chaos, the human captain stood silent, smiling as if he had always known this would happen. The battlefield was no longer a clash of two fleets. It had become something else, a test of will, a war of fear. The alien armada, once a wall of steel and fire, was now full of cracks. Ships drifted out of formation. Captains argued with each other. Soldiers whispered of curses, of prophecies, of a human who smiled as if death itself obeyed him. But fear alone did not win wars. The human captain knew this. Fear was only the beginning. Now came the moment to strike. On the bridge of his flagship, the captain stood silent, hands clasped behind his back. His officers waited, eyes fixed on him, as if the entire galaxy hung on his next word. Then he spoke, his voice calm but carrying the weight of destiny. Now. That single word was enough. Engines roared to life across the human fleet. Ships moved with sharp precision, no hesitation, no wasted motion. They formed into three wings, slicing through the battlefield like knives. At the front, the flagship led the charge. Human cannons fired, not wildly, but with surgical accuracy. Each shot was a spear, each missile a hammer. Alien cruisers exploded one after another, their hulls torn apart before they could even turn. The void lit up with fire. For the first time in the battle, the humans struck with full strength, and the galaxy trembled at their fury. On the alien flagship, panic spread like a storm. Officers shouted over each other, trying to regain order. The High Commander screamed for unity, but his voice was lost in the chaos. Shields failing. They're breaking our formation. We cannot target their ships. They move too fast. The High Commander slammed his claws down. Fight! We still outnumber them. But numbers meant nothing now. Against the humans' perfect coordination, the alien fleet looked like children swinging blindly in the dark. Back on the human bridge, an officer shouted, "Enemy left flank is collapsing." The captain's smile deepened slightly. "Press it." The left wing of the human fleet surged forward. Drones slipped between alien ships, striking engines and reactors with deadly precision. In minutes, the Empire's proud flank disintegrated, leaving a hole wide enough for human ships to cut through like a blade through cloth. Another officer turned, excitement in his eyes. "Sir, we are breaking them. We can push them back." The captain shook his head softly. "No, not push. Break." And so the humans focused not on driving the enemy away, but on cutting them apart. Their strikes were merciless, cold, and precise. Every alien flagship that tried to regroup was targeted. Every attempt at retreat was blocked. The battlefield became a maze, and the aliens were the prey trapped inside. The turning point had come. Alien soldiers knew it too. On smaller ships, discipline was gone. Some crews begged their captains to flee. Others refused to fight at all. Rumors spread faster than orders. The humans know our every move. They can see the future. They cannot be beaten. One frightened officer whispered, "The captain's smile. It is the last thing we will see before death." The words were carried across channels, repeated from ship to ship, until even hardened veterans felt their claws shake. In the war chamber, the admirals argued like frightened children. "We must retreat." "No, regroup. We can still win." "Retreat will shame us forever." The High Commander roared, but even his voice sounded hollow. For centuries, his empire had ruled through fear. Now fear was eating them alive. He realized with a chill that their greatest weapon, their terror, belonged to the humans now. On the human flagship, the captain gave another order. "Target their command vessels." His fleet obeyed instantly. Within minutes, several alien flagships were burning wrecks, their commanders silenced forever. Without leadership, the armada fractured further. Groups of ships fought alone, cut off from their allies, easy prey for the human guns. One officer reported, "Their center is falling apart, sir. They have no chain of command left." The captain nodded slowly. "Good. Let fear do the rest." The turning point was clear. No longer were the humans defending. No longer were they the cornered prey. They were hunters, and the aliens were scattering like frightened animals. All across the galaxy, watching fleets and hidden observers saw the truth. The Empire had met an enemy it could not crush. Humanity, once thought weak and small, had turned the tide with cunning, patience, and one quiet smile. On the alien flagship, silence replaced shouting. Officers no longer believed in victory. Some stared at their screens with empty eyes, watching their comrades die. Others whispered of escape pods, of abandoning ship, even if it meant shame. The High Commander sat frozen in his chair, claws trembling. His voice cracked as he whispered words no one thought they would ever hear. This cannot be happening. But it was. On the human bridge, the captain looked out into the burning battlefield. His eyes were steady, his face calm. Around him, his crew watched in awe. For them, this was not just a victory. It was proof. Proof that humanity was not a weak species hiding in the shadows. Proof that even against the greatest empire, humans could rise, strike, and win. The captain's smile lingered. He did not celebrate. He did not boast. He simply watched, knowing the turning point had been reached, and that the galaxy would never forget this day. The battlefield, once alive with fire and thunder, was now falling into silence. Broken ships drifted like corpses in the cold void, their burning wrecks lighting the darkness. The alien fleet, so vast, so confident, was no longer a wall of power. It was shattered, scattered, and leaderless. For the first time in centuries, the Empire's war drums had gone quiet. On one crippled alien cruiser, the crew sat in darkness. Sparks flickered from ruined consoles. Smoke filled the air. No one spoke. They only listened to the silence around them, the silence of their fleet, the silence of defeat. One soldier finally whispered, his voice broken, We were supposed to crush them in minutes." Another hissed back, trembling, "Minutes? It has only been hours, and it feels like years. Look around you, our empire has lost everything in one battle." The truth hung heavy in the air. The empire, built on fear, was tasting fear itself, and it was bitter. On the alien flagship, the High Commander sat slumped in his chair. His claws no longer struck the table. His voice, once booming with confidence, was gone. Around him, his officers no longer shouted orders. They only stared at screens showing wreck after wreck, fire after fire. The youngest officer dared to speak, voice shaking. "High Commander, the fleet is finished. We cannot regroup. We cannot even retreat. The humans," he swallowed hard, "the humans own this battlefield." The High Commander bared his fangs, but it was not anger. It was despair. For centuries, his kind had spoken of empire as eternal, unshakable. Now he realized the truth. Even empires can fall in silence. Across the human fleet, the mood was different. It was not joy, not celebration. It was something deeper, an understanding of what they had done. They had faced the strongest force in the galaxy and broken it. On the human flagship, officers stood quietly at their stations. No one cheered. No one laughed. They simply looked to their captain, waiting. The captain gazed out at the battlefield, his eyes reflecting burning wrecks and drifting metal. His face remained calm, his smile faint but steady. One officer finally asked, in a hushed tone, "Sir, is it over?" The captain's reply was quiet, almost like a whisper carried across the stars. "No. This is only the beginning. But for them," he gestured to the broken alien fleet, "for them, it is already over." On alien ships that had survived, despair grew heavier. Captains who once barked orders now sat frozen. Soldiers who once swore loyalty now spoke only of survival. "They knew everything," one muttered. "They led us into a trap," said another. "No," whispered a third, eyes hollow. "It wasn't a trap. It was destiny." Some ships shut down their weapons. Others broadcast signals of surrender, though no reply came. Many soldiers simply sat in silence, staring at the stars, waiting for the end. The galaxy itself seemed to listen. Hidden watchers from neutral worlds, spies from rival empires, merchants with secret transmitters. All of them witnessed the same truth. The empire had fallen, not in years, not in decades, but in a single battle. And it had fallen to humans. Whispers spread like wind through unseen corridors. The humans are not weak. The humans are not prey. The humans have teeth. And always the story returned to the captain, the man who smiled while surrounded, the man who carried victory before the first shot was fired. On the alien flagship, silence thickened until it was suffocating. Officers avoided each other's eyes. The High Commander finally rose, his body trembling. He looked at the battlefield one last time. Then he lowered his head, his voice empty. "We are undone." Those words echoed through the chamber, heavier than any explosion. They were not just an admission of defeat. They were the death of an empire's pride. On the human bridge, the captain gave his final order of the day. "Hold fire. Let them sit in their silence. Fear is louder than any weapon." His officers obeyed. The fleet slowed, weapons cooling, engines quiet, and so the battlefield grew still. But that stillness was not peace. It was the silence of broken spirits, the silence of defeat. The aliens had once believed themselves eternal. They had believed no power could humble them. But now, they would be remembered not for their strength, but for the moment they fell quiet before a human smile. In that silence, legends were born. And across the stars, the name of humanity began to spread. Not as victims, not as rebels, but as something far more dangerous. The battlefield was quiet now. Only wreckage drifted across the stars, glowing faintly with fire that refused to die. The once mighty alien armada had been reduced to broken pieces. And in that silence, a new story was being written. A story that would spread far beyond the battlefield. The story of a man who smiled. On surviving alien ships, soldiers sat in darkness. Some whispered prayers, others stared into nothing. Their commanders tried to speak of honor, of regrouping, but no one listened. They remembered only one thing, the human captain's face, calm and unshaken, smiling even when surrounded by thousands of ships. One soldier whispered to another. He was not smiling because he was foolish. He was smiling because he knew. Knew what? The other asked. That we were already defeated before we even began. And so the tale grew. News traveled faster than light. Spies, traitors, and hidden observers carried the story across the galaxy. In smoke-filled bars on neutral stations, voices murmured. Did you hear? The Empire sent its strongest fleet against Earth, and it never returned. In the middle of the chaos, the human captain smiled. That smile broke them. Children on distant colonies repeated the story in their own way. A man who could scare an empire without firing a shot. Soon, he was no longer just a captain. He was a legend. In the halls of alien power, leaders whispered in fear. Admirals avoided speaking of the defeat, but they could not silence the rumors. Senators demanded answers, but none came. The truth was worse than any battle. They had been beaten not only by weapons, but by something deeper. The humans had used fear against them, and fear spreads faster than armies. On the human flagship, the crew stood in silence, watching wreckage drift past their windows. They were alive, victorious, but they did not cheer. They knew history had changed. One young officer broke the silence. Captain, the galaxy will never forget this day. The captain said nothing. He only looked at the burning remains of the enemy and allowed the faintest smile to return. That was enough. His crew understood. Across the stars, alien storytellers twisted the truth. Some said the human captain could see the future. Others claimed he commanded death itself. A few even believed he was no man at all, but a weapon wearing human skin. No matter the version, the ending was always the same. He smiled, and everything turned against them. On one ruined alien ship, an old warrior sat with his broken blade across his knees. He had fought in countless battles, survived endless wars, but never had he seen anything like this. He whispered to his soldiers, "Remember this, it was not our weapons that failed us. It was our hearts." His smile cracked them open. The younger soldiers nodded, fear in their eyes. They knew the Empire would never rise the same way again. In secret corners of the galaxy, other species watched with interest. Some saw hope. If humans could defeat the Empire, maybe others could be free too. Some saw danger. If humans had such cunning, they could not be ignored. But all agreed on one thing. The humans had changed the balance of the galaxy forever. Back on Earth, the captain returned quietly. There were no grand parades, no shouts of triumph. Humanity did not yet understand the full weight of what had happened. But whispers reached even the farthest cities. Our captain smiled, and the Empire broke. Mothers told it to their children at night. Soldiers repeated it to give themselves courage. Leaders spoke of it in hushed meetings, realizing that fear had shifted to their enemies. And so the legend grew larger than the man himself. The smile became a warning. Alien soldiers flinched at the mention of it. Commanders shuddered when they remembered it. Even those who had never faced the humans began to feel its shadow. For centuries, empires had ruled with fear. Now, one human smile had turned that fear back on them. On a quiet night, the captain stood alone, looking out at the stars. His face was calm, his eyes steady. He did not speak, for he knew he didn't need to. Somewhere out there, countless enemies were already whispering his legend. Somewhere, soldiers who had never seen him were already afraid. And still he smiled. Not because of pride. Not because of arrogance. But because he understood the truth. This was not the end of war. It was the beginning of something greater. The galaxy would never forget the day everything turned against the Empire. And they would never forget the man who smiled.